Welcome back to Women Writers in Chinese History. In this lecture, we'll talk about notable works of drama written by women during China's last imperial dynasty, Qing. In the description of Red Brush, the Qing dynasty during the 18th and 19th centuries witnessed the second high tide of women's writing after the late Ming or the 17th century moment. Thousands of women left behind poems from this period. At the same time, a number of women began to try their hands on fictional genres such as drama and found a public audience for their works. One of the most prominent motifs in their writings is that of the cross-dressing heroine. And unlike earlier legends of Mulan, Zhu Yingtai, or Fifth Daughter of Wang, these heroines often refuse to go back to their female identity or give up the power they have earned as men, thus expressing the rise of a more explicit yearning for social equality among women writers of the period. The first case we'll look at is a dramatic work called Fan Hua Meng, Dream of Splendors by Wang Yun. Wang Yun lived during the 18th century, and her father was a scholar official. Wang Yun completed the play in 1768, and then her father showed it to an official friend, who subsequently shared the script with his own younger sister. The sister, whose name was Zhang Zhao, was so impressed by the play that she funded and arranged its publication. Finally, the play came out in print in 1778, accompanied by prefaces written by both the father and the son of Wang Yun. In the words of Wang Yun's father, "My daughter Yun, from her earliest years, showed signs of an extraordinary disposition. She understood histories and other books after a single glance, and always resented being born a woman. So she wrote Dream of Splendor in order to give expression to the pent-up feelings in her breast." This sentiment is echoed by Wang Yun's son, who also became a scholar official. In his words on his mother's work, "The lady, my mother, has an extraordinary disposition. She understood the histories and other books, and she always regretted that she could not achieve success in the examinations and attain high office. So she wrote this piece in order to give expression to her pent-up feelings." Wang Yun's play, which won the approval of her father, son, and female readers like Zhang Zhao, features the story of a woman named Wang Menglin. Her name literally means "dream of the unicorn." Here, the unicorn or qilin is a mythical animal in the Chinese tradition, symbolizing virtue, prestige, and power. It is a pattern that appears on the robes of high officials during the Ming and Qing dynasties. The female protagonist's name is thus deeply symbolic of a desire for social power and social representation. And the play opens up with a monologue by Wang Menglin expressing precisely this desire. "Submerged and buried in the women's quarters for over 10 years, I cannot achieve a high position. I cannot become an immortal. When reading books, I always envy Ban Chao's ambition. When pouring wine, I constantly recite the poems of Li Bai. My heart's manly energy yearns to soar to heaven. 闺阁沉埋数十年，不能深贵不能仙。读书每羡班超志，把酒长吟李白篇。怀壮气，欲冲天." This passage alludes to Ban Chao. We have learned about him as a famous general from the Han Dynasty and a brother of the woman writer Ban Zhao. Later, this poem also refers to Li Bai, the great poet from the Tang Dynasty. In the Chinese tradition, Li Bai was revered as the poetry immortal Shi Xian. Supposedly, Li Bai wrote his most inspired poems when being intoxicated. As a woman, Wang Menglin hopes that she can express her personality as freely and be appreciated, a wish that was impossible under the social conditions of the period. Moreover, the female protagonist Wang Menglin also expresses a desire for a beautiful woman as her companion. The play portrays that she hangs up on her wall a painting of a beautiful woman as she speaks the following lines. If I were a man, I would definitely find myself a beauty like this for a wife. Let me pray to her. Who knows, she may step down from the painting. Beauty, my beauty, once I shout loudly, once I call softly. Why does she show me no pity at all? If I want to engage her in conversation, I can only hope to vaguely see her in a dream. We wonder if these lines manifest a same-sex desire or function to allow Wang Menglin to fully embody a male identity. Furthermore, here the playwright was perhaps poking fun at the cult of Qin, as represented by dream plays like the Peony Pavilion, by bending the heteronormative assumptions of the famous play. Then, Wang Menglin dozes into a dream in which she is transformed into a man. As a man, she chases after beautiful women and marries two courtesans as her or his concubines. In her male identity, Wang Menglin also wins a top rank of the civil examination. Yet, Wang Menglin finally wakes up and finds out that she's still a woman. Disappointed, she falls asleep again and encounters in her dream Ma Gu, the hemp lady, a famous Taoist female deity. The deity then enlightens her to the illusoriness of all phenomena and forms. The final aria of the play ends on this philosophical note. All of a sudden I wake up, my spring dream vanished. In vain I rushed about in my dream. Throughout 3 lifetimes, my feelings have been foolish. Today I laugh. What was the point? Only now do I understand that both women and men should reform their ways and convert. 无端一觉宵春梦，梦里空驰骋。三生情忘痴，一笑今何用？方晓得女和男一样须回醒。To sum up, Wang Yun's play Dream of Splendors expresses several notable themes. A woman of male ambitions, a woman's homoerotic desires, and a parody of the cult of Qin. We can witness similar themes in the works of other women playwrights, such as He Peizhu's Pear Blossom Dream, 梨花梦. Pear Blossom Dream is a 5-act play from the first half of the 19th century. It focuses on a young woman named Du Lanxian, who has just got married and is traveling with her husband to his hometown. On the road, she is overcome with longing for her past female friends. Then she encounters in a dream a beautiful female immortal who asks her to write a poem on the sprig of pear blossoms she's holding in her hand. After waking up from this dream, Du Lanxian is consumed with longing for the female immortal in her dream and paints a portrait of her. Several months later, Du Lanxian still yearns for the female immortal in her dream and falls gravely ill. When she is near death, Du Lanxian has a second dream, in which she meets with the immortal of her dream, the pear blossom immortal, and her friend, the lotus flower immortal. After a wonderful time together, the two immortals explain to her that these happy encounters are rare, and their separation is inevitable. At this point, Du Lanxian is awakened from her dream by the sound of a bell, and the play thus ends. Du Lanxian's dream is an expression of her pent-up male ambitions and desires for her past female companions. The female protagonist expresses these traits of her personality in the monologue at the opening of the play. I'm Du Lanxian. From the day I was born, I have had a manly appearance and the talents of Ban Zhao, as well as the air of the immortals and the bones of the Wei. But what bothers me is that I have a partner on Phoenix Ridge who is skilled at applying my kingfisher green eyebrows. I will not leave my name on Goose Pagoda, and to the end will be ashamed of having been nothing but rouge and powder. 我杜兰仙生成妆貌斑才，待得仙风道骨。可恼者栾冈有偶，宫画翠眉。雁塔无名，终残红粉。So here Du Lanxian compares herself both to a man and to past women writers like Ban Zhao. She also boasts that she's like immortal, and by implication may transcend the limitations of gender. Yet, as she complains, because of her female identity, she will not leave her name on Goose Pagoda, that is, a place where the names of the top examination candidates are announced. This discontent builds to the female protagonist's longing for her female friends. In her words, I remember how in Yangzhou I vied to identify the grasses and evaluate flowers, cultivate the clouds, and there beneath the moon got tipsy with my girlfriends, among whom was one who wished that I was a man so that she could refill my incense and carry my inkstone. 回忆汉江与东林珠，女伴斗草坪花，休云醉月。曾有愿于男子身，当作天香捧砚者。Here, refilling incense and carrying inkstone, 天香捧砚 is a common trope in the cult of Qin, referring to how a beautiful woman serves a male scholar in his studio, as shown in the paintings here. By saying that one of her friends wishes to serve her in this manner, Du Lanxian portrays a strong bond reminiscent to the sworn sisterhood in women's script literature. Again, we cannot fully ascertain what the nature of her desire is, whether it is directly homoerotic or somewhat metaphoric to express her desire to be a man. Moreover, we should be aware that identity and sexuality were perceived quite differently in traditional China. According to this caveat from Redbrush, a modern reader could not be blamed for wanting to read passages such as the one above as an expression of lesbianism, but it is questionable whether the author would have understood her work in this way. This is not because lesbianism did not exist in pre-modern China, but rather because homoerotic relationships were not necessarily regarded as exclusive, nor were they considered to be the primary basis for the formation and definition of one's identity. Next, we'll look at similar themes in the writings of Wu Zao, a woman writer who was active during the first half of the 19th century in the prosperous Hangzhou area of the Jiangnan region. Wu Zao was a prolific poet and was especially gifted in Ci poetry. She also wrote a one-act play entitled The Fake Image, Qiao Ying, which was the only play by a woman that became a stage hit during her lifetime. It is this play we'll focus on in the following discussion. It seems that Wu Zao came from a merchant's family and was married to a merchant. It's been reported that her father and her husband never even glanced at the book. However, Wu Zao and her sisters received a literary education when they were young. This likely indicates that education for women from wealthy families was relatively prevalent in the Hangzhou area during this time. Wu Zao never mentions her husband in her writings and was possibly estranged from him, yet it didn't seem that she suffered from any financial difficulty during her life. She was in communication with other women writers from the area, and likely wrote the play Fake Image in her 20s. As a one-act play, Fake Image is entirely consisted of the heroine's monologue, both sung as arias and spoken. The heroine's name is Xie Xucai, that is, Xie, the willow floss talent. Clearly, this name evokes the image of the 6th Dynasty woman writer Xie Daoyun, and her willow floss line that represents the notion of female talent. In the play, the heroine draws a self-portrait of herself in male attire and drinks by herself. Solitary drinking is a common motif in Chinese poetry, and Li Bai, the great Tang poet we have just mentioned, left a number of famous poems using the motif to express his pursuit of spiritual freedom. Here, Xie Xucai, the female protagonist of the play, drinks in contemplation of the lack of social appreciation for her talents due to her gender. The motif of the portrait again echoes that in the cult of Qin and in works such as the play Peony Pavilion and the story of Feng Xiaoqing. Here, however, gazing at the portrait of herself being a man, the female protagonist is envisioning another identity for herself. While drinking in front of her self-portrait as a man, Xie Xucai reads a famous ancient poem, Encountering Sorrow, Li Sao, by the legendary poet Qu Yuan from the Warring States period, around 3rd century BCE. According to traditional accounts, Qu Yuan was a virtuous and talented minister in the southern state of Chu. Due to slanders of some evil ministers, he was banished to a remote region. As a gesture of protest, he wrote a long narrative poem, Encountering Sorrow, Li Sao, telling about his experience with banishment and his intense soul-searching. Upon the completion of the poem, he committed suicide by drowning himself. Up to today, Qu Yuan has been revered as a paragon of virtue in the Chinese tradition and was commemorated by the Dragon Boat Festival that takes place every summer. In evoking Encountering Sorrow and the legend of Qu Yuan, Wu Zao's Fake Image emphasizes the ancient poet's resentment at being misunderstood and underappreciated, and his spiritual quest from heaven to earth on where his soul ultimately belongs to. Given its fundamental concern with gender identity, her play uses these classical motifs to deplore the cultural limitations imposed on women and raises the question if a woman is able to leave behind any literary legacy like the ancient Qu Yuan. In terms of its form, Fake Image experiments with blurring gender roles towards delivering its message. In traditional theater, there are clearly demarcated role types. In particular, for a love romance, the male lead is called Sheng, who usually has the image of a young scholar, and the female lead is called Dan. In Fake Image, despite featuring a female protagonist, the script emphasizes that she should be portrayed as a Sheng, that is, as a young man. This performance design adds to the play's bending of gender roles. Fake Image was first performed in Shanghai in 1825. There, the female protagonist was indeed performed by a male actor, and due to the success of the performance, the script was published and became a bestseller. At the same time, it should be noted that during the Qing dynasty, Most female roles, that is, Dun characters, were performed by male actors who had been trained, usually since a young age, to sing in a high-pitched voice and perform in a feminine manner. In the background, you can hear an example of this style of singing. This tradition was owing to the stigma associated with the profession of actors. As we have seen, earlier actresses were often courtesans. In the conservative culture of the Qing dynasty, even fewer women would become actresses, and sometimes they were banned by the government to do so. Therefore, almost all the female roles on stage were performed by men during the Qing period, and this skill of female impersonation was continuously learned by some male actors of traditional theater today. The male actor who played Xie Xucai was said to sing in a high-pitched voice, and one may wonder if he was trained in the Dan Rou style. Moreover, even the male scholar Sheng type could look quite feminine with heavy makeup and a relatively high singing voice on stage. We'll see that the play depicts Xie Xucai as an androgynous character having both male and female characteristics. In a performance context, her androgynous features can certainly be highlighted by the ambiguity of role types, from the designation of the female protagonist as a Sheng to the employment of a male actor using a high-pitched voice to sing, and possibly coming from a Dan or female impersonation background. Reflecting the heroine's discontents at the restrictions placed on her gender, the play opens with the following self-introduction by Xie Xucai. The stage direction characterizes her as a young male, Xiao Sheng, who is dressed as a male scholar, that is, in a long gown, hair in a scarf, according to the heroine's monologue. I am Xie Xucai. Although I was born and raised in the inner quarters, I'm by nature addicted to books and histories. I'm ashamed of my female dress, and I despise powder and rouge. I dare not boast of texts engraved on purple crystal that will earn me an official position, but I love to discuss the swordsmanship of the knight-errant. If I were allowed to give free rein to my innermost desires, they'd be no different from those of the flying rock that soars beyond the clouds. But unfortunately, my body is not in harmony with the world, and in the end, what I most resemble is a sick crane locked behind bars. 我谢旭才，生长闺门，性单淑使，自惭巾帼，不爱铅华。敢夸子时昔闻，却喜黄山说剑。若论襟怀可放，何殊觉云表之飞蓬？无奈身世不协，竟似比樊笼之病鹤。Feeling trapped in the body of a woman, Xie Xucai continues her contemplation in the following words. Alas, this is because I'm fettered by my physical form, and I can only sigh all alone over my sadness. If one considers the matter carefully, though, while miraculous transformations depend on heaven, the initiative rests with oneself. That is why, a few days ago, I painted a small portrait of myself, dressed in male attire, which I have entitled Drinking Wine and Reading Encountering Sorrow. I dare not call myself an extraordinary beauty, but I secretly congratulate myself for being a sophisticated gentleman. Today, I have changed into male attire. Now that I'm here in my study, let me lift my spirits by enjoying this painting for a while. 嗨，这也是束缚形骸之所自卑自叹罢了。但是仔细想来，幻化由天，主持在我，因此日前描成小影一幅， 改作男儿衣履，名为饮酒独骚图。敢云绝代之佳人，窃许风流之名士。今日易换归庄，偶到书斋玩乐一番，借消愤懑。Here, by commenting that while miraculous transformations depend on heaven, the initiative rests with oneself, Xie Xucai presents her self-portrait as a man, and her contemplations on this portrait in the attire of a man, as her own initiative to escape from her female image and from her female condition. This statement may also characterize the creative agency of the playwright Wu Zao by writing this play, which manifests her questioning of gender assumptions. What we would further note is that here, Xie Xucai on stage mirrors precisely her image in the portrait, as a male scholar, drinking and reading encountering sorrow. Through this mirroring relationship, the play reinforces Xie Xucai's male aspirations and creates an intricate aesthetic effect. Xie Xucai's following lines further brings out the idea how the space of the theater allows for a subversion of social norms and thus allows for women's reimagination of their identity. The actor's cap and gown can be exchanged at will. By doing so, new and interesting images will come out one after another. Filled with sorrow, I offer a libation of wine. Who in the world understands my noble and heroic feelings? 幽梦衣冠平颠倒，初意翻新巧。闲愁借酒浇，侠气豪情问谁知道？ Then, interestingly, Xie Xucai mixes male and female characteristics when describing her portrait as a male scholar, thus creating a genderly ambiguous or androgynous image. Just look, a jade tree in the wind, bright pearls at the side, extended eyebrows and long nails, a black cap and a blue gown, painted quite exceptionally. 你看，玉树临风，明珠在侧，修眉长爪，乌帽青衫，画得好洒落也。Here, a jade tree in the wind, 玉树临风, is a conventional phrase that describes the charming demeanors of a male scholar. This phrase was first used to describe one of the seven sages. Yet bright pearls at the side likely refer to women's earrings. Extended eyebrows and long nails again refer to a woman's look. Yet a black cap and a blue gown obviously describe the attire of a male scholar. Facing this hybrid androgynous image of herself in the portrait as a man, Xie Xucai further states how she would respond to anyone who might challenge her crossing of gender roles. In her words, "You say that a female student like this is truly absurd, that it is just an illusory image, an empty flower, that it is, after all, the fate I must suffer. This new painting of me looking like a wild-hearted fellow truly means my fate is as thin as paper. Don't say any more about my heart being as lofty as heaven." 你道女书生直甚无聊，赤锦的幻影空花，也算福分当消。任狂奴样子新描，真个是命如纸薄，再修题心比天高。These lines manifest the play's title, Fake Image. However, we should note that the original Chinese title, 巧影, should be more accurately translated as pretended image or disguised image, since the word 乔 or 乔装 means to put on a disguise and was often used during the time to refer to a woman cross-dressing as a man. The central tension of the play then concerns the question whether this cross-dressing image is a mere illusion or the female protagonist's authentic self. In the above lines, heart as lofty as heaven, 心比天高, refers to Xie Xucai's male-like ambitions, whereas fate as thin as paper, 命如纸薄, describes her destiny as a woman. Earlier on, we have seen this trope of how beautiful and talented women all have a thin fate, a trope that was popular in works related to the cult of Qin. However, Xie Xucai's following lines adamantly refutes the relevance of this theory to her own life. But to be like this unfettered body, a cap done sidewise on bundled hair, is much better than a listless toilette, limbs bound by light silk. Why do I have to be crushed powder, vexed fragrance, beset by illness, overcome by sorrow? 似这放形骸笼头侧帽，煞强如卷装书约体清宵。为神粉碎香桥，并咏愁饶。What she's arguing here is that her intoxicated image in the painting, similar to that of the great poet Li Bai when he wrote down his most inspired poems while drinking, is much more befitting to her than the image of a sickly beauty in stories from the cult of Qin. Later, she enumerates her aspirations in the following words, which are filled with allusions to earlier works by male poets when they describe their spiritual freedom or heroism. I want to avail myself of the misty waves to sail my painted craft. I want to drive the winds of heaven and visit the isles of the immortals. I want to pluck a bronze lute and on the Yanzi sing a song. I want to take hold of a precious sword and whistle by lamplight. Oh, I want to use the rainbow as line and lower it into the sea to hook the golden turtle. I want to drink like a whale and pawn my gold and sable to buy some wine. 我待趁烟波泛画饶，我待遇天风游蓬岛，我待拨铜耙向江上歌，我待看清平在灯前笑。呀，我待拂长虹入海钓金鳌，我待吸长鲸试酒解金雕。Likely, by evoking all these classic images, Xie Xucai, or the playwright Wu Zao, is suggesting that if male poets had the poetic license to imagine themselves in all these fantastic manners across the tradition, why can't a woman do the same? Yet, after all her unrestrained fantasies, Xie Xucai comes down to a note of despair as she ponders on the eventual disappearance of all traces about her life and creativity, since she is after all a woman. Weeping bitterly, she thus says towards the end of the play, "Come to think of it, Qu Yuan's spirit may have returned to heaven, but his fame has remained in this world, so his situation after death was still not too bad. But I, Xie Xucai, will disappear without a trace, and since this minuscule soul of mine will disappear into the endless void, what will become of me?" 我想灵君神归，天上明落，只这死后的风光可也不小。我谢續才，将来淹没无闻，这点小魂灵飘飘渺渺，究不知作何光景。In the end, in the last aria of the play, Xie Xucai reaches a resolution that resembles the ending of other plays by women writers. That is, to realize the insubstantiality of life experience itself, and to find solace from Taoist and Buddhist philosophies. In her words, brown rooster and white sun propel us unto old age. When will we wake up from this butterfly dream? Forever I'll follow the man in my book, and from now on be a Kalavingka bird. Indistinguishable, image and body have fused into one. 黄鸡白日催年老，蝶梦何时绝？长依圈里人，永作嘉陵鸟。分不出影和形，同化了。The butterfly dream in these lines refer to the famous Taoist story in which the Taoist philosopher Zhuangzhou dreamed that he was a butterfly. Waking up, he wondered if it was him who dreamed about the butterfly, or a butterfly dreamed that it was Zhuangzhou in this world. This story expresses the idea that life might be a dream, and reality may exist somewhere else. The Kalavingka bird is a legendary bird in Buddhism, symbolizing the Buddhist paradise. With these philosophical and religious evocations, Xie Xucai and the playwright Wu Zao concludes her contemplation. Although her ending message is ambivalent and full of pathos, it suggests that her image as a woman in this world is likely a disguise, a fake image, whereas the apparently illusory self-portrait coming out of her imagination is what she is truly about. On this note, let's conclude this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll continue to look at the image of the cross-dressing heroine in the type of narrative poetry known as plucking rhymes, 弹词, which became a woman's genre of sort during the 19th century. Then we'll conclude our semester's materials by discussing the feminist revolution of the early 20th century and the case of Qiu Jin, China's most famous feminist.